Hello, thank you for joining us for CBM Calling. I'm so glad that you did. Today is part 3 in our series, our coworker series, talking about faith and work and the intersection of those things as we faithfully follow Christ into the workplace. I'm really happy to be joined by Tim Warnock today, who is our guest. Hi, Tim, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Tim is a concept artist, which might be a new term for some of you, but it's a really cool thing, and we'll explain more about what Tim does. So Tim, I'm just going to give a little background for you, a little bio, but feel free to jump in and to add anything that you want to that isn't in your official bio. So Tim's background is in illustration, graphic design, and I know your original ambition was to become a book illustrator, which is really interesting. But in 2001, you became interested in digital media, and then subsequently you kind of went into that direction. You started working on Hollywood movies. This is the part that people get really excited, Tim, is when I tell them what movies you've worked on. I remember we did this at the Good Work Conference, which was last November, which is where we met, and you were one of our guests there on our panel. And when we started to name the movies that you had worked on, you could hear in the room, people went, oh, there was like an audible
Yeah.
gasp from people. So some of the movies are Pacific Rim, Avengers, Transformers, Dark Side of the Moon, and Harry Potter, which, like, if I tell my daughter that, she'll just lose her mind. So, so that's just a few of the things that you've worked on. And you say at the heart of your work is the desire to create beautiful images and tell compelling stories and take people on adventures and spark imagination. So that's a really cool bio, I have to say, one of the coolest bios I've ever read. But what's something that you can tell us about yourself that may not be in that bio?
It doesn't have anything to do with that. Well, I'm a husband and father. I've got 3 sons that are 8, 10, and 13. And aside from my interest in art, I'm really interested in music as well. So that tends to be the 2 sort of things that occupy my creative energy. Yeah, I mean, all the credits there. There's several splits in my career, so all the movie stuff, or most of it that's listed there, is work that I did in post-production, so working in visual effects. Whereas the past 10 years, well, more like 7 years, has been focusing on pre-production concept art, which is a kind of illustration. So the visual effects work would have been like digital environments. I worked as a matte painter, which is kind of an obscure term most people don't really understand, but essentially is, when you think about a movie like Harry Potter and the majority of the background is synthetic, computer generated stuff, I would be the guy that does the environment stuff.
Right.
So in the last Harry Potter movies, where the dragon is coming out of the bank and crashing all over the roof, and all that stuff is modeled and rendered in 3D, and that's the kind of work that I was doing then.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah.
So an interesting part of your story, which you haven't disclosed, but I'll just do it for you, is that you were actually a missionary kid.
Yeah.
So your parents were Canadian Baptist missionaries, and that you actually grew up in Bolivia.
Yeah, I was there till I was 8. Yeah, 8 years old.
Do you think that's had a lasting impact on your worldview?
I think so. I mean, if you've never experienced life in a developing country, you kind of have an idea of what normal is that isn't what's normal for the majority of the planet.
Yeah.
So I think that gives me a bit of I guess, a sympathy or an understanding of I guess, the bigger global picture, and that, it's really just the luck of the draw where you end up being born, that what your life ends up looking like and what your struggles are going to be and the challenges you're going to face. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask you the hard question that I've asked everybody that we've done this with so far, which is, and I know this is the hardest question, so we're going to start off with this, which is, what is your calling? What would you say is your calling if someone were to ask you that?
Oh boy. I don't know, really. Because I don't feel like I'm somebody that had like 10 options and had to choose one.
Most of us don't have that either.
I feel like, in general, in school and everything, I was an underachiever, and I feel, I mean, I'm definitely someone that it leads with their kind of gut instinct on things. So
Mm.
if I'm going to respond to calling and God is trying to call me, then He would hopefully do it that way. Because, but yeah, I mean, I think just based on where my skills and gifts are and the things that I'm passionate about, kind of adding all those things up together, definitely being an artist and a creative is it's where I feel kind of at home, and it's something that yeah, that I'm very passionate about, and just am always excited about just
Mm.
the arts in general. So yeah, I guess I'm called to be an artist.
Well, and I remember you telling me, being a storyteller through like visual means, right? Being able to share story visually
For
is,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, you could be an artist and be a draftsperson or work
Mm.
doing technical drawing, and I definitely don't feel called to that. And so I am most excited about imagery and like illustration. That everything that I gravitate toward has to do with storytelling, and
Mm.
I love like fantasy and science fiction just because of the amount of creative reign that you can free reign you can
Mm.
have in building those worlds and just creating imaginative things.
Mm.
It's a lot of fun.
Mm. We've talked a lot about influences. So, this is something I do hear from a lot of younger people, is just being able to have people that, I won't say mentor, but who influence them. And I've certainly had lots of influences in my life and helped to lead and guide my career in different ways. I know that you've worked with people earlier on in your career who you really felt was a great influence on you and the direction that you ended up going in terms of your work. Can you
Yeah,
tell us more?
yeah, for sure. I'd probably starting in school, I'd had a couple of key teachers um, that pointed me in certain directions. I definitely, like, I did not leave high school with a clear idea of what I wanted to do.
Mm.
I, some, like many of my artistic peers will talk about, when they saw Star Wars for the first time, or
Mm.
the getting a Star Wars book, or seeing Jurassic Park, and it was like they knew then at, 10 years old, I want to do that. And that was definitely not me at all. I didn't have I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't really that interested in any of that stuff. I mean, I would watch movies, but there was never a part of me that thought, "Oh, I
Mm.
could be part of that." So it really was very late in my career. I'd already been working as a graphic designer for almost 10 years
Mm.
when I kind of just a colleague pointed me to like visual effects work and what matte painting was, and that kind of thing. And so it was it was that. Sorry, my wife just poked her head into the door. um, and that was kind of this sort of moment where I was awakened to something, and I'm like, wait a second, I've been looking at this.
Mm.
I've been aware of it. I've seen these movies, and I didn't even put two and two together that someone like me could do this work. And even when I started to explore it, I had people, I mean, even my parents, that were just like, "Are you what? Like, you have a perfectly good job. Why? What on earth?" And it was just like the idea of like you're gonna work on movies, like that's insanity. Like just do what you're doing, you're fine. But then I would just meet people, and who would
Mm.
kind of share information and really show, like, kind of pull the curtain back, I guess. And it was like, no, it's actually totally accessible. You
Mm.
can do this, and you have the skills to do it.
Wow. Was there one particular person that you kind of point to?
For the visual effects stuff, for sure, it was an art director at a company I was working
Mm.
with. His name is Dan Wheaton. If you're out there, Dan. And I, at that point in my career, I was really kind of a traditional purist. Like I didn't even like the idea of using a computer to create art, and and had it in my head that it wasn't even there yet. That maybe
Mm.
one day. But he showed me resources and people that were doing stuff, and it was a complete
Mm.
awakening to me, that, like what you could do and that I could participate in.
Mm.
And it happened fairly quickly. It only took a couple of years to completely shift gears and change careers and start working in visual effects.
Mm. I think a lot of us have a Dan Wheaton somewhere in our life as well, and we're so grateful for those people that help to really shape and influence and guide, somewhere along the way. So hopefully Dan is watching. If he is, thank you, Dan. Can you share a little bit about the creative process? So for people who don't work in this field, they're probably just in awe as to how you even come up with and produce what you can produce. I mean, when you described kind of what you did on Harry Potter, people are like, how do you even do that? Like that in itself is awe-inspiring when you see the finished product, especially for people who don't work in those kinds of fields, right? You just think like, where would you even start to do something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you see your faith being a part of that? Do you hope to reflect, I guess, God's glory through your work?
I mean,
It's a hard question, but
yeah, I was ramping up to answer technical questions there, like, and tell you how to make a visual effects shot. I was like, what? I mean, I would say, like, as a Christian, where I would hope that God's glory is reflected is in every aspect of how I conduct myself. I don't know that it would necessarily translate into creating a shot as maybe only as much as like that I'm trying to do a good job at it. But all the people sitting next to me that don't share my faith are also there trying to do a good job. Maybe they're, and I wouldn't say my motivations are any different. I need to get paid. Me doing a good job has everything to do with me providing for my family. And if I don't do a good job, I will no longer be working this. But I think my faith would come more into play in, considering the bigger picture and influencing just where I guess I prioritize things in my life that might put the work lower down. And I think that's something that I've in the past 5 or 6 years really reflected on, because in the time when I was working on those movies, I would not say that my faith was properly in place, or that it was influencing how much time I gave to my work. I was very much driven that this was everything, and I needed to make it all count. And part of it was I moved my family all over the world to do this stuff. So I felt a huge amount of pressure that this had to be worth it, because we sold our home for this. And so I would say those years of my life were hugely out of balance and unhealthy, completely unhealthy. I mean, we lived in Australia, I was working like 7 days a week, 14-hour days, and came out at the end of that like on the verge of a nervous breakdown. So I've seen the wreckage that can cause. I feel like I came out of it relatively unscathed and didn't hurt my family, but certainly I have colleagues that destroy their families and their marriages. And so I think my faith plays into that, is like considering like, what is all of this worth, and what are the most important things, and trying to kind of keep that balance.
And how do you do that as a business owner? So when you transitioned into owning, to starting your company with your partner, how did that translate into, say, integrity in business practices, or the way that you conduct your business? Because as we say, most business owners want to maximize their profits, right?
Yeah.
But as a person of faith, I think both you and your partner as well, right?
Yeah.
Or how does that kind of influence the way that you do your business?
Yeah, I mean, when we started our business, neither of us is a business person. Like we're not looking at it in terms of, I mean, obviously profit is a nice thing, but our motivation has always primarily been that we're artists, and we wanted to create a work environment that we would like working in, and we didn't have, when we started, we didn't have the intention of getting staff, but when we began to think about that, we wanted people to have the opportunity to work on fun stuff and try to make it an environment that they got treated fairly and was as nice a place to work as possible, I guess. I mean, it's always going to be a bit of a high pressure, like working in entertainment, like there's deadlines and stuff that can make it stressful. But I guess in that, trying our best to be, agents of change and be fair to people, not make people work overtime and those kinds of things. I say that on the other side of all of our staff being gone and reflecting on, what does all that mean? Like when you're, in a position of laying people off, like how do you do that with integrity and grace? And
so Tim, we should talk about the last 4 months, because COVID has just shaken so many people's world and work up in so many ways that we could not possibly have anticipated. So even when we talked in February, right, everything, your business, it was thriving, you were really busy, you had so many staff, we were talking about, how to treat your employees fairly, and then COVID struck.
Yeah.
Right. And so can you just tell us some of the impacts that have happened?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's not entirely COVID. We had, even when we spoke, Ryan and I had done a lot of reflection over where we had grown to, and what do we really want, and are we in a place now doing what we feel good about? And it had grown to a place where we were both feeling a lot of anxiety about just the weight that was on us to try to carry the whole thing, and needing to be in a place where you're needing to make a decision. Either you're going to be a manager or you're going to be an artist, and you can't do both well. And neither of us was prepared to no longer be an artist and just be a manager. So we had been doing some thinking even prior to that about, do we downsize? Do we go back to being just the two of us? Like, what would the impact of that be? But then COVID just put a nice sharp point on all of it. And then we came to this place where we're already talking about downsizing, and now it's being forced on us to put people working remotely. And what does that even look like in our situation where everything we work on has NDAs, and we've got to now think about setting people up to work remotely, and what it was like, okay, either we're deciding we're in this for the long haul because we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and what the impact of it's going to be. What is that going to do to our stress level that's already high? And we just came to the place where forget it. I can't do this anymore. It's like, let's just go. We initially let half of our staff go, and then a month later, a lot of our work, probably 2/3 of our work, all got pulled because it's all TV. So if you can't shoot a show on a set, you can't you might as well stop planning and doing concept art or put it on pause anyway. And so faced with that, we're like, well, now we really practically can't continue, because we're going to be in serious trouble if this goes on for a while. And so for us, trying to do that well looked like, let's be more than fair to our people that, they've given a lot of themselves, and they've contributed to the growth of this company, and let's try and set them up for success as best we can. So we were, getting rid of all of our stuff in the office and computers and offering it to them and that kind of stuff. And, a few of them have landed really well. I kind of joke, I'm like, yeah, you're probably better off now. so it was nice to be able to see that, like, oh, good, they landed, and are going to do great. They're and we still exist as a resource for them to ask questions and try to, coach them towards success. And, for all of the work that we had and that is now coming back, we can't do it now because there's only two of us. There were
Right.
6 of us before. So
Right.
now these people are the first people that get the call, that when that client X calls, we can say, well, actually, so and so, they were doing a lot of your work anyway. Like you can work with them directly now,
Mm.
and some of them have already responded to that. So that's been really, really positive to see.
Though it's been a difficult process, do you find yourself coming out of that actually feeling like you're actually closer toward what you were hoping for, that you were spending your time as an artist rather than managing
Yeah, I mean, it's been
staff?
like both of us have been in like this complete fog for
Mm.
like a couple of months now. Even after we finally got rid of everything and sold off a lot of the stuff in
Mm.
the office, and uh, it was almost like a grieving process of like, on
Mm.
one hand you're kind of relieved, like, well, now all I have to think about is what I have to do at the
Yeah.
end, by the end of the day. But yeah, like it was just a weird, we built this thing like literally on our 6-year anniversary, shut the whole thing down, and then you're just kind of reeling, like we didn't get to do like a big lunch to say goodbye. It was
Mm.
like this
Yeah.
whole anticlimactic, just fizzle out, and feeling like we failed a bit in terms of like letting
Mm.
people down. I mean, it's awful to have to let people go, even if there's a great explanation for it.
Mm.
It still has a huge impact on their lives. So that just is
Mm.
horrible. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I just felt so sick to my stomach the whole week that we were
Mm.
having to do all that stuff. And these are people that you consider friends. You built relationships with them. We were a small studio. We're very, very close. We know all about their lives and who their significant
Mhm.
others are and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. So it's a very personal thing. It's hard to do. So I'm glad I'm not going to have to do that anymore. But yeah, I'm still, both of us are still trying to
Mm.
find our legs and feeling like really distracted, and
Mm.
working from home, adjusting to that is a
Mm.
challenge. But we're really fortunate right now in that our workload is not super demanding, and there's not strict deadlines on anything. So
Mm.
we're able to just kind of give ourselves grace and take it easy.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I'm sure your staff, though always horrible to hear that kind of news that your job is ending, are grateful for the way that you did it. Because there's good ways to let people go, and there's horrible ways to do it, right? And
Yeah.
I think you worked very hard to make sure you did it in a way that showed the integrity of how you ran your business, right, as a person of faith.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to receive bad news differently.
Sure.
And so, but we explained it as best we could, and
Mm.
tried to make people aware of that this is not a personal thing, and it's not based on performance. This is just the situation is hard. And I think when people understand, because they could see it in us, that even prior to that, like, we were getting really stressed out.
Mm.
And I mean, I even said as much as like, I'm really not happy with the manager that I am right now. I don't feel like I'm doing any part of my job well. I'm not being an artist well. I'm not being a manager well. I'm becoming impatient, and that's just not who I want to be.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I'd rather just end it, rather than it like escalate to
Mm.
being like something you regret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tim, I want to be able to point people towards some of your amazing work. How can people see the kind of work that you do? Where would they go to see that online?
You can go to our website is northfrontstudio.com, which is grossly out of date. So everything you see there is, well, maybe some of it is 2 years old. The problem with a lot of the work we do is much of it stays under wraps. Even like for the TV show work, um, a lot of these shows sort of reserve, they want to be able to release like art books and stuff like
Right.
that. So even after it's public, they still don't want you just posting all the work that you've done. But
Mhm.
there's a good cross section of stuff that is a pretty good representation of the work that we do.
Great. So thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate your honesty, because I think what you've been through over the last few months is hard to talk about even. Yeah, it's quite fresh. It's only been a few months, and I really appreciate your honesty, and I think just the way you've expressed how faith plays a part in your work and the way that you do your work. So I'm very grateful for your coming on today and for talking to us more about your work. So before I let you go, there's a few people who want to say hello. So I'm just going to say Randy Stanton. Hi, Randy. Randy is my colleague. He is our rep in Atlantic Canada. So Randy says hello. And my colleague in Bolivia, Patricia Nacho, she helps to facilitate our ascent teams. And you may know the name Nacho because that's probably a name that you knew of even from maybe in your time when you were in Bolivia, because her family has been involved Baptist churches there for a long time. And Barb Keys, who is my colleague, says it's great to hear more from Tim after hearing him at the Good Work Conference last November. And then also from Nancy Webb, who is from Kingsway Baptist Church here in Toronto. So hi, Nancy. Cool. There's lots of other people watching as well, and I'm sure they want me to just express how thankful we are to have heard from you today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Next, I hope we have another follow-up conversation, Tim, and maybe in a few years, and we'll see where God has led you by that point in your life. And maybe there'll be some amazing insights that you'll share.
Yeah, maybe you'll be a pastor by then.
You know what? Maybe you'll feel calling to go to Bolivia and work alongside Patty Nacho.
Maybe.
Patty, prepare yourself. We're sending a concept artist your way. So that could be very interesting. So just to let everybody know, starting next week, we will be moving to Tuesdays and Thursdays for CBM Calling. So we'll be airing just 2 times a week. There will be no shows for the remainder of this week for Canada Day. I'm sure everybody will be taking some time off, enjoying time with their family, and we want to encourage that and not encourage you to be watching Facebook Live on those days. So enjoy your time with your family or your friends. And we will see you back next Tuesday. And it'll be exciting because next Tuesday is Active in Mission Kickoff. And I know, Tim, you're intrigued. You're like, what is Active in Mission? How can I be part of this? Well, luckily for you, we will be telling you next Tuesday how you can be part of this. I hope I'm trying to keep it kind of intriguing, but basically you have to be doing something active. And by doing that, you can help raise money for missions. So that's something people could be doing over the summer holidays. So Active in Mission next Tuesday with Louise and Adrian, and they will let you know how you can be active in mission. All right. Well, thank you so much once again, Tim, and take care.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.